My name is Liam Carter, and last Monday at 9:12 a.m., HR pulled me into a glass conference room so fast my coffee was still in my hand. Through the transparent walls, I watched the entire floor pretend not to stare. Screens frozen, whispers half hidden, Brandon's smirk reflected like a crack in the glass. Across from me sat HR and senior partner Martin, a thin folder with my name on top. "We need to discuss concerns about your relationship with Natalie Brooks," HR said, calm like this wasn't a bomb. My pulse thudded. In this firm, rumors travel faster than facts. Someone wanted this one to ruin me. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever dealt with a toxic workplace, a jealous coworker, or been blamed for something you didn't do. You'd be surprised how many people have lived through moments just like this. I read the comments, and the stories you share are the reason I keep telling mine. I didn't grow up dreaming of fluorescent lights, billable hours, or 100-page contracts. But somewhere along the way, the idea of becoming an attorney lodged itself so deeply inside me that it felt less like ambition and more like obligation. My parents weren't cruel people, they were simply relentless. My father believed pressure was a form of love, and he delivered it with the consistency of a metronome. In high school, when teachers told them I was bright, my dad didn't congratulate me. He just said, "Good, don't let it slip." Praise was a currency we didn't trade much at home. Expectations, though, those were endless. I still remember a parent-teacher conference where my English teacher tried telling my parents I was creative, that I could write. My father smiled politely, then asked about my test scores. The conversation shifted entirely. That was the night I realized being good wasn't enough. I had to be exceptional, and exceptional people don't allow themselves to fail. They don't stumble, they don't disappoint, and they certainly don't let rumors touch their reputation. Maybe that's why the day I walked into Sterling and Winchester, one of Chicago's sharpest corporate law firms, I felt both thrilled and terrified. The lobby smelled like polished stone and old money, an environment that tolerated mistakes the way surgeons tolerate trembling hands. I checked in at security, clipped my temporary badge to my jacket, and rode the elevator up with a handful of people who all looked more confident than I felt. My first sight of the office was glass, walls, doors, partitions, everything transparent, everything visible. People moved quickly, talking in low tones, navigating their calendars as if every minute had a dollar amount attached to it. In a place like that, you learn fast. Invisibility is death, attention is currency, and reputation is oxygen. My first encounter with Natalie Brooks wasn't dramatic. It wasn't electric. Not then. She walked into the welcome orientation 30 minutes late, holding a folder filled with trial notes and a stainless steel water bottle engraved with her initials. She greeted the group with a curt nod before sitting beside the director of litigation. When she shook my hand after the meeting, her grip was firm, her gaze steady, long enough for me to feel seen, but short enough to stay professional. "You're Carter?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I read your writing sample." A pause. "Precise. You pay attention to structure." She didn't smile, but she didn't need to. That was the first compliment anyone at the firm gave me, and from someone like her, it landed like a stamp of legitimacy. My first week was brutal. 12-hour days, lunches eaten standing up, case files that smelled like old paper and panic. But on Thursday, the calendar notification appeared for the first time. Development time with N. Brooks, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. People around me glanced at my screen, then at me, then at each other. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I assumed every junior associate got something like that. They didn't. That first evening, the office emptied out as daylight faded, leaving behind the hum of the HVAC system and the glow of desk lamps. I walked toward the glass conference room, where she sat reviewing a stack of contracts. She didn't look up when I entered. "Sit," she said. "Let's see what you've been working on." For the next hour, she went through my drafts line by line, asking questions, correcting language, pushing for clarity. She was relentless but fair, sharp but never cruel. Somewhere between discussing indemnity clauses and negotiation leverage, she asked about my law school clinic experience, then my financial aid job, then, unexpectedly, my family. "You don't talk much about them," she said. I shrugged. "Not much to talk about." She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me but wasn't going to push. "You work like someone who's been told every mistake is fatal," she said. I didn't know whether to feel exposed or understood. Our Thursday nights became routine. She'd bring a cup of chamomile tea, I'd bring a stack of questions. She never wasted time on small talk, but somehow our conversations dipped into personal currents anyway. Not romance, not intimacy, just understanding. I didn't realize how rare that was in an office like ours. One night, a month into the job, she helped me untangle a complicated clause that had been making me feel stupid for days. When she finally explained it in a way that clicked, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "See?" she said. "You overthink. The law doesn't reward panic, it rewards control." A strange warmth spread through my chest. Admiration, gratitude, something else I didn't want to name. And then there was Brandon Hale. I first met him in the office kitchen. He was charming in the way people are when they believe charm is a skill rather than a trait. He laughed loudly, flirted effortlessly, and shook hands like he was campaigning for office. When he found out Natalie had given me development sessions, something flickered across his face. Not envy exactly, but something adjacent. A week later, he saw us sharing a quiet moment after a tense call with a client. She said something dry and unexpectedly funny, and I laughed, really laughed. Brandon passed behind us and slowed just enough to notice. That was the moment the first seed of jealousy rooted itself. I didn't understand it then. I do now. But the moment that changed everything came weeks later, the night Natalie told me I had partner potential if I didn't burn out or get in my own way. It felt like being handed a possibility I didn't think someone like me was allowed to reach for. I didn't know that possibility was the very thing someone else was already planning to weaponize. The first time I sensed real danger that had nothing to do with case law or deadlines, was on a rainy Thursday evening, 3 months into the job. Natalie and I were in the glass conference room again. The rain tapping against the windows softened the office's usual sterility. She was explaining a complex restructuring issue, her tone calm, deliberate, almost gentle. It felt strangely intimate, the two of us isolated in that quiet corner of an otherwise empty floor. I asked a question, nothing extraordinary, and she looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher, something like quiet pride. It made my stomach tighten. I looked away too quickly, hoping she hadn't noticed. She always noticed. Then she said something that shifted the air. "You have potential most people don't, but you don't trust it yet." No one had ever said anything like that to me, not in a way that sounded like truth rather than encouragement. "Do you?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. She blinked, caught off guard, not by the question but by the vulnerability inside it. "I wouldn't stay late every Thursday if I didn't," she said. I know she didn't mean it the way it sounded, but my chest warmed anyway. And maybe that warmth was the first step toward the place where everything later collapsed. Around that time, Brandon started inserting himself into my orbit with a kind of passive-aggressive finesse that could only come from someone who'd spent years weaponizing charm. He'd wait near my desk after meetings, drop comments like, "Must be nice having private coaching," or, "I guess some of us just get lucky." Always with a grin, always loud enough for others to hear. I tried ignoring him. My upbringing had taught me to avoid conflict, to swallow discomfort and keep going, but every comment chipped at something inside me, my confidence, my place, my sense of safety. Then came the afternoon he walked into the break room as I was making coffee. "You know," he said, leaning against the counter, "people notice when the boss stays late with just one associate." I kept stirring the coffee, hoping silence would end the conversation. He lowered his voice. "It's a hell of a way to get ahead, man. I wish I'd thought of it first. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from a fury I didn't know how to express without detonating my career. I set the spoon down, forcing my voice steady. "You don't know what you're talking about." He smirked. "Don't I?" I walked out before I did something I'd regret. At the time, I still believed gossip was background noise, annoying but harmless. I didn't understand how quickly rumors can reorganize reality in a place where perception is currency. As winter edged toward December, pressure at the firm intensified. Q4 meant performance reviews, partner evaluations, and general paranoia woven through every conversation. People calculated their worth not in kindness or collaboration, but in billable hours and client lists. The NYC conference fell right in the middle of that tension. I'd never been to New York before. The city overwhelmed me the moment we stepped out of the cab. The noise, the lights, the cold air that tasted like ambition. The conference itself was a blur of panels, networking, handshakes, and forced confidence. But the nights mattered. On the second evening, after a dinner with clients, Natalie suggested stopping by the hotel bar. "Just one drink," she said. "We earned it." The bar was dim, golden lit, the kind that makes strangers feel like confidants. We sat in a high-backed booth, far from the other attorneys. She ordered a whiskey neat. I stuck to beer, though my hands shook when I brought the glass to my lips. For once, we didn't talk about work. She asked about my childhood, and I told her, briefly, carefully, about the pressure, the constant threat of disappointing someone. "That sounds exhausting," she said softly. "It was normal," I replied. "Normal doesn't mean healthy." Her concern disarmed me more than any compliment ever had. I asked her about her early years at the firm she worked at before Sterling and Winchester. She hesitated, swirling the ice in her glass. "They promoted me faster than some people liked," she said. "Rumors started that I was leveraging certain relationships." "Was any of it true?" Her eyes snapped to mine. "No," she exhaled. "But it didn't matter. Rumors don't need proof, they just need momentum." I didn't realize it then, but she had just handed me the blueprint for the disaster that would later engulf us. At some point, the conversation shifted. I don't know how. I only know that our voices dropped, our shoulders leaned in, and it felt like the rest of the bar dissolved. "You're different outside the office," she murmured, "less afraid of saying the wrong thing." "What if I'm afraid of saying the right thing?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Like what?" "Like, I don't just admire you as a lawyer." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, humming, dangerous. She looked at me the way someone looks at a locked door they're tempted to open. And then the door slammed shut, figuratively and literally, because Brandon walked in. He froze when he saw us, eyes narrowing, mouth twisting into a knowing smirk. "Well," he said, "didn't expect to see you two here. Alone?" Natalie straightened instantly, the mask back in place. "It's a public bar, Brandon," she replied coolly. But the damage was done, the moment shattered, the air cooled. That night, I barely slept. A mix of guilt, longing, and dread churned inside me. I knew nothing had happened, but I also knew how it looked. Rumors don't need truth, just witnesses. And he had witnessed enough. When we returned from New York, everything was different. Natalie moved our Thursday meetings to midday, door open, conversations clipped and strictly professional. And for the first time, I sensed something dark forming around me, something intentional. The storm hadn't begun yet, but I could hear the first rumble. When we returned from New York, the tone of the office shifted in a way I felt before I understood. Something about the air changed, colder, sharper, filled with glances that looked away too quickly. I told myself it was just post-conference exhaustion, but deep down, I knew better. People don't look at you like that unless they think they know something they shouldn't. The first Thursday back, I waited for the familiar 6 p.m. calendar invite. It never came. Instead, a new one appeared. Mentorship check-in, 2 p.m., conference room 3B, door open. 2 words, door open, told me everything I needed to know. At 2 p.m., I walked in to find Natalie already there, flipping through documents with a stiffness that didn't match the woman who once stayed late to help me navigate a difficult clause. When I sat down, she didn't look at me immediately. She kept her expression neutral, her posture composed, controlled. The version of her the whole firm saw, not the version I'd started to know. "We'll keep these daytime for a while," she said, still not meeting my eyes. "Okay," I replied. I tried to keep my voice even, but something inside me sank. "There's been chatter," she continued, "and I don't want it to affect your standing here." "My standing?" I echoed. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were guarded. "Rumors don't have to be true to be damaging." She didn't say my name. She didn't say Brandon's. She didn't have to. I left the room feeling like the floor had shifted half an inch to the left. The office suddenly felt too small, too exposed, as if everyone could see straight through me. And maybe they could. Glass walls don't care about context. The whispers started small, just a comment in the break room, a too long glance during a meeting. But whispers grow legs in places like Sterling and Winchester. They evolve into assumptions, then judgments, then quiet verdicts spoken behind closed doors. It happened one morning in the pantry. I walked in to grab coffee and 2 associates froze mid-sentence. One cleared her throat and changed the subject too fast. "Morning," I said. They nodded without meeting my eyes. I stirred my coffee, feeling their silence press into my back. As I walked out, I heard it, a muffled line not meant for me. "Well, he didn't get all that attention for nothing." The burn that spread across my neck was instant. Shame and anger tangled in ways I couldn't separate. The worst part wasn't that they believed something happened, it was that they believed I needed it to succeed. Later that week, I presented research during a litigation team meeting. When I finished, Martin, the senior partner, gave a short nod. Before he could say anything else, Brandon leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Impressive," he said. "Private coaching does wonders." The room went silent. A few people shifted uncomfortably. I didn't look at Natalie, but I felt her stiffen. "That's enough," Martin said, tone clipped. Brandon held up his hands in fake surrender. "Just saying, some of us could use that level of mentorship." A few awkward laughs followed, forced, thin, complicit. I kept my jaw tight and stared at my notes, pretending the words didn't slice into me. Pretending I didn't want to stand up and tell every person in that room that nothing had happened. But in a place like ours, denial sounds like confirmation. The first real hit came in the form of a calendar invitation. HR informal check-in, 11:30 a.m., room 214. My stomach tightened. HR meetings never meant good news. The room was overly bright with a bowl of mint candies no one ever took. Linda, our HR manager, sat across from me with a soft smile that didn't feel soft at all. She had a notebook open, pen ready. "I just wanted to chat briefly," she said. "About what?" "Your mentorship with partner Brooks." My throat dried. "What about it?" "There have been questions." She chose her words carefully. "Concerns about boundaries, perception, power dynamics." I felt heat climb up my neck. Nothing inappropriate happened. "I'm not accusing you of anything," she said. "We just need clarity." She asked about late-night meetings, how often we talked, what happened in New York. Every answer felt like stepping into quicksand. The more I explained, the deeper I sank. When it was over, she smiled again. "This is just routine, Liam." Routine, right. The minute I stepped back into the hallway, Brandon walked past with a coffee cup, and that same arrogant satisfaction. "Tough morning?" he asked. "Go to hell." He grinned. "Touchy." I walked away, pulse thudding in my ears. Still, I tried to focus on work. I tried to pretend none of it mattered. But pretending doesn't stop sabotage. One afternoon, I submitted a financial analysis for a major restructuring case. I double-checked every number, triple-checked. Hours later, Martin sent a firm-wide email pointing out substantial miscalculations in the document. My stomach dropped. I opened the file. The spreadsheet wasn't the version I last saved. Someone had edited it minutes before it was sent in. Last editor, B. Hale. My vision tunneled. The betrayal was so blatant I almost couldn't process it. I confronted him after work. "You touched my file," I said. He feigned innocence. "It's a shared drive, Liam." "You edited it right before I submitted." He shrugged. "Maybe don't leave mistakes lying around." I felt something inside me fracture. He wasn't just trying to embarrass me, he was trying to destroy me. And worst of all, people believed him. The fallout from the spreadsheet mistake was immediate. Even though Martin didn't reprimand me publicly, the message was clear. I looked careless, sloppy, exactly the kind of associate who needed hand-holding. And in a firm where perception mattered more than fact, that stain spread fast. For the rest of the week, people spoke to me like I was fragile, like I was someone who needed to be managed rather than trusted. And every time Natalie passed me in the hallway, she gave me a polite nod, the kind you give someone you barely know. Not the woman who once stayed late helping me rewrite an indemnity clause. Not the woman who told me I had potential. I didn't blame her. Rumors punish proximity. Still, the distance cut sharper than any humiliation Brandon threw my way. The following Monday, we had a cross-team meeting reviewing ongoing litigation matters. I had prepared for days, ready to contribute, determined to reclaim some semblance of credibility. I barely got 3 sentences into my update when Brandon interrupted. "Actually," he said, leaning forward as if he were doing the room a favor, "I took a look at those numbers last night. There's a better angle we could be using." He spoke over me for a full minute, unraveling my entire strategy with a tone that suggested I'd brought a crayon drawing into a courtroom. People nodded along, not because his idea was better, but because he said it louder. When he finally finished, Martin turned to me. "Liam?" he asked. "Anything to add?" My throat tightened. "No," I said. "I think that covers it." Brandon smirked. He knew exactly what he'd done. After the meeting, I stepped out into the hallway for air, but the moment I reached the break room, 2 paralegals quieted their conversation. One of them glanced at me, then whispered, not quietly enough, "I mean, you don't spend that much time with a senior partner unless there's something going on." Her friend snorted. "No wonder he gets the good cases." The humiliation was a physical thing, hot, suffocating, heavy. I wanted to shout the truth. I wanted to slam my fist on the counter. Instead, I walked out, my jaw locked so tightly I felt pain shoot up into my temple. Later that afternoon, the firm held a small happy hour for a departing associate. I almost skipped it, but staying away felt like giving up. I showed up late, hoping to avoid attention, but the second I stepped into the bar, I saw them, Natalie and Brandon, standing dangerously close. He leaned in as she spoke, smiling in a way that made my chest twist. She wasn't smiling back, but the proximity alone was enough to feed every insecurity, every doubt. Had I imagined our connection? Had she been mentoring me out of pity, out of obligation? Or worse, had Brandon convinced her I was a liability? I turned to leave, but she saw me before I got to the door. Something in her expression flickered. Guilt, maybe, or concern. But she didn't move toward me. I didn't move either. We were 2 people stuck in the same storm, both pretending we weren't getting soaked. The next morning, an email from Natalie appeared in my inbox. "Please stop by my office at 10 a.m. Her tone was clipped, professional, formal. When I walked in, she was standing by the window, arms crossed. "Close the door," she said. My chest tightened. Doors used to mean collaboration. Now they felt like warnings. She turned to face me. "I'm taking you off the Kensington restructuring matter." I blinked. "Why?" "It's too high profile. If people think I'm showing favoritism..." "I earned that assignment," I said, more sharply than intended. "I know," she replied. Her voice softened for a second, then hardened again. "This is to protect you." "Protect me?" I repeated. "Or protect you?" The question hung in the air like a blade. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I walked out with a hollow space in my chest where trust used to live. By the end of that week, things escalated further. An all-associates email circulated, informing us that HR would be conducting routine culture and conduct check-ins due to recent concerns. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Brandon's smirks weren't subtle. He lingered near HR more often, as if reminding them he existed. Friday afternoon, as I packed up for the weekend, I overheard Brandon in the hallway, talking to senior partner Grant in a voice just loud enough for me to hear. "I just worry," he said, "whether some associates get opportunities for the right reasons." Grant nodded slowly, thoughtfully. My blood ran cold. Brandon wasn't just spreading rumors. He was building a case. That night, on my Uber ride home, Chicago lights blurred outside the window as the car sped down Lakeshore Drive. The city glowed like a promise and a threat wrapped into one. I replayed every moment in my head. The laughter in New York, the shift in Natalie's eyes, the whispers, the spreadsheet sabotage, the HR meeting. At some point, I stopped wondering whether Brandon was involved. I started wondering how far he was willing to go. But the breaking point came the following Tuesday. I walked into the office kitchen and the room went quiet. A junior associate stepped aside, revealing a phone on the counter. On the screen was a blurred photo, Natalie and me at the New York bar, leaning toward each other, faces too close, lighting too intimate. Someone had taken it from across the room. Someone had circulated it. My stomach dropped. Brandon looked at me from across the kitchen. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. He wasn't just trying to undermine me. He was trying to end me. And he was only getting started. The day everything exploded didn't start with fireworks. It started with a calendar alert. All hands litigation review. Conference room A. Mandatory. Mandatory. The kind of word that promises blood. When I walked into the glass-walled room, the air was too still, too thick. Everyone was already there, associates lined along the table, partners at the head, HR in the corner like vultures waiting for something to die. Brandon sat near the front, posture relaxed, confidence radiating off him like heat from asphalt. And Natalie. She was seated beside Martin, her expression unreadable, her hands clasped so tightly I could see the tension in her knuckles. Every chair scrape, every whisper, every shifting body felt amplified by the glass walls. It was like being inside a courtroom where I was both defendant and witness, and everyone else had already made up their minds. Martin cleared his throat. "We need to address certain concerns before we move forward with quarterly evaluations," he began. "This relates to professionalism, boundaries, and behavior affecting team culture." My pulse was hammered, my palms dampened. I already knew who this was about. Then Linda from HR stood. "We've received multiple reports alleging perceived favoritism between senior partner Brooks and associate Carter," she said, matter of fact. "We've also been made aware of an anonymous complaint citing power imbalance, inappropriate after-hours meetings, and potentially compromised assignments." Gasps, small but unmistakable, rippled through the room. I felt every set of eyes stab into my skin. The glass walls felt tighter. The room felt smaller. My throat felt like it was closing. Linda placed a photo on the table. The bar photo. Our faces are too close. Lighting too intimate. Context ripped away. Brandon leaned back, arms crossed, voice casual. "Look, I'm not saying anything happened. I'm just saying perception matters. If some people get special access, it's not fair to the rest of us who work hard." There it was, the jealous male line sharpened into a knife, delivered with practiced innocence. I stared at him, and for the first time I saw not a rival, not a coworker, not even a bully. I saw someone who genuinely believed he deserved what I had, even if he had to burn the whole firm down to get it. Liam, Martin said, turning to me. Do you want to respond? I opened my mouth, but no words came. My humiliation, my fear, my anger, every emotion twisted together, choking me. Then I saw Natalie's face. Not cold, not distant, but pained. Afraid, not of guilt, but of what speaking might cost her. She had taught me the law rewards control, but in that moment, control felt like surrender. I forced my breath steady. Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. First, I began, the photo shows nothing inappropriate. We were discussing cases after a client dinner. Nothing happened. Nothing ever happened. Brandon made a soft scoff under his breath. It sliced through me like a blade. I continued. Second, about favoritism, every assignment I received is documented. My billables, my research drafts, my trial prep, they're all time-stamped. They show the hours I put in and the work I delivered. I turned to Martin. And the Kensington mistake, the spreadsheet? If you check the edit history, you'll see the numbers were altered minutes before submission by someone else. Murmurs fired across the table. Martin frowned. Do you have evidence of that? Yes, I said, pulling up the file on the screen. Edit history. Username, B. Hale. Timestamp, 9:07 p.m., 12 minutes before submission. The room went dead silent. Brandon's smirk faltered. Linda shifted in her seat, pen freezing mid-air. But the moment that truly cracked the air open was when Ava, the intern, spoke from the back of the room. I need to say something, she said, voice small but steady. Everyone turned. I was at Starbucks last week, she continued, eyes darting nervously toward Brandon. I overheard him talking to someone. He said he was tired of the golden boy treatment and that he'd take Liam down a notch. He was bragging about changing a file. Brandon's face was drained of color. Martin went stone cold. For the first time, I watched Natalie lift her chin, not in defense, but in quiet fury. I can also confirm, she said, her voice sharp as steel, that nothing inappropriate ever occurred between myself and Mr. Carter. Any mentorship was strictly professional. The only breach of conduct here appears to be the deliberate sabotage of an associate's work. If the room had cracked before, now it shattered. Brandon sputtered something incoherent, an excuse, a denial, but no one listened. The power he held over the narrative evaporated in seconds. I sat there, heart pounding, realizing something with absolute clarity. For months, I had been surviving their version of my story. Now, for the first time, I'd taken it back. After the meeting, the office emptied slowly, like people were afraid to move too fast around the wreckage. I stayed seated long after the others left, staring at the imprint my palms had made on the conference table. My heart was still racing, but not from fear this time. Something steadier had taken its place. Clarity. Cold, quiet clarity. Brandon avoided my eyes as he hurried out, flanked by HR. Whatever happened next to him wouldn't be immediate, but it would be inevitable. Sabotage doesn't vanish just because the saboteur panics. Evidence doesn't forget who created it. Natalie paused by the doorway. For a moment, it looked like she wanted to say something. Apology, maybe. Gratitude. Something more dangerous. Instead, she exhaled softly. This isn't over, she said. She wasn't warning me. She was preparing me. I walked back to my desk slowly, the office unnaturally silent. For the first time since everything started, people didn't look through me. They looked at me. Some with guilt, some with relief, some with fear, the kind people feel when they suddenly realize they misjudged the wrong person. At my desk, a new email sat in my inbox. Subject: Next Steps, from HR. I didn't open it. Instead, I opened something else, my own folder of collected documents, screenshots, logs I'd quietly saved over the past month. The spreadsheet edit wasn't the only suspicious activity. There were Slack messages Brandon sent about me to others, comments he'd made about partners, even a flagged complaint he'd filed against another associate last year in an attempt to get ahead. People like him don't sabotage once, they repeat patterns. But the file that made my pulse steady wasn't about him, it was about the firm. A report buried deep in the shared drive documented cases of inconsistent performance review practices, several tied to favoritism allegations long before I stepped foot in the building. Patterns no one wanted to acknowledge, patterns someone could expose if they wanted to. I leaned back in my chair. They thought they had buried me under rumor and silence. All they really did was teach me where the fault lines were. And now, I knew exactly how to make the ground move. If you've ever been caught in the crossfire of office politics, you know how fast a rumor can rewrite your whole career. If this story felt familiar in any way, hit like and subscribe. Share it with someone who's surviving a toxic workplace, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. I read every story, and trust me, your experiences matter. This chapter isn't the end. It's only the beginning of what comes next.